Welcome everybody to Alive with Kevin. Most of the time on a Monday, or many times on a Monday, you'd see me here doing a podcast. You'd see up over my shoulder the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. You don't see that today. You see Virtual LeaderCon. And usually what you would see if you have been here before at this time slot or watching it later is me by myself, at least at first. Well, so I guess it's different in every way today. My name's Kevin Eikenberry. I'm happy to be with you today. We're going to talk about creative ways to develop your leaders. This is the business that we've been in for a very long time. And so I think there's a lot more to think about than just say, hey, we need to build a workshop for our leaders at whatever level. And that's kind of what we want to spend some time on today, talking a little bit about that. And today is brought to you by our upcoming Virtual LeaderCon event, which we'll tell you a little bit about before we're finished. If you're here with us live, I hope that you will ask your questions, make your comments, do whatever makes sense as you're listening to us. I hope you'll share those ideas, your thoughts, your comments, etc., any questions, and we'll incorporate those as we can. I hope you'll do that. And this person with me is Adrienne Knox. She is a longtime member of our team. I don't even know what to call her in terms of, officially, I think if she has a business card, I think it's probably says Director of Marketing, but she's in many ways the person that makes everything in this organization run, and she will be my co-hostess for Virtual LeaderCon. And so I've asked her to join me today, mostly so you don't just have to listen to me talk, but for her to sort of interview me, for us to have a conversation about creative ways to develop leaders. So I'm going to turn the mic over to Adrienne and let Adrienne lead us forward.
All right, thank you. And hello, everybody. This is exciting. This might be my first LinkedIn Live. So cool. I like it. Well, so I think maybe today we should start with start at the beginning, a very good place to begin. And why don't we talk about the idea of the overabundance, perhaps, of free leadership resources. And you wrote a blog post about this recently. For anybody who reads your blog, you might have seen something about this, but you talked a little bit about some of the roadblocks that organizations and leaders might face when they are trying to sift through all of the options. So can you talk maybe a little bit about some of these roadblocks?
You mean like free leadership content like this? That's a good example of it, right? And if you go back a long time, back when Kevin didn't have gray hair, there wasn't near as much of it because we didn't have, if we go back far enough, we didn't have the internet, right? But even at, we had some blog posts along the way, but the ability and the quality of video and so many other things along the way, the adoption of and the popularity of podcasts, and now short video, long video, all these things, like there's just so much stuff, right? And it's great. And obviously Adrienne, we contribute to it at a pretty good clip, I suppose. But I think that the problem is, as a consumer, and I'm right in that boat too, right? Whether it's about leadership or some other subject matter, is that there's just so much to choose from, and so we deal with what I call the change paradox, the choice paradox. Like we want choice, but you give us too much choice, and it's hard, right? And I think that that's the situation that we fall into. And if we're trying to help our leaders, if we're sitting here with an organizational leader hat on, and then it's like, how do we find the right stuff, or where do we even start? And certainly as an individual leader, same thing, right? Like I don't even know where to start because there's so much. It's like you go to a buffet, and I'm guessing, Adrienne, that you're not necessarily a buffet person at a restaurant. This is a guess. I don't know that. We've never had this conversation.
That was a good guess. You won't find me at any buffet.
I didn't think so.
Unless it's the only thing available.
Right. Okay. So if it's not a restaurant, but you go to a potluck, you go to anything where there's a lot of choices, and the challenge is that you don't know where to start, right? And so to me, the plethora of free leadership content in and of itself is a challenge. Then I've got to decide, what do I want to work on? And then even once I decide what I want to work on, I don't even know where to start. And it's like looking at that buffet with all of that food on it, and it all looks good. I've already paid for it, right? But I don't know where to start. So there's a couple of things I think really get in the way.
So then what are some ideas or thoughts that you have, tips for where to start? So how to start? So you've identified this. What's the first best step?
Well, I don't know if it's the first best step, but it's certainly one of the first best steps, which is to figure out what it is you really want to be working on, right? So organizationally, right, clients will come, or prospects will come to us and say, hey, we really want to work on coaching. So like if you're in your organization, you say, hey, we really want to work on coaching skills for our leaders. And the first question that I would probably ask if you reached out to us is, hey, well, coaching is pretty big. Let's try to narrow it down a little bit. What specifically do you mean? So you would want to do that same thing, whether you're talking to someone like us or not. If you're thinking about it from a free content perspective, like where is it that we want to focus? So prioritization, I think, comes first. Because once you do that, then I can say, okay, who are some people that I trust? Right? Who are some people in that online space? I've read their book. I've seen some of their other stuff. I've heard good things about them. And I think then you want to say, okay, I want to learn more about topic X, or our leaders. We want to build on this particular skill set. Then it's like find 2 or 3, what I would call trusted sources that you can start to narrow the search, right? So we've narrowed it from a content perspective, Adrienne, and now we've narrowed it from a provider perspective. And then still, you could have a lot of things, right? So then it becomes a matter of, if you're thinking about this organizationally, curating it. Like, pick some specific things, because even then, say you got 3 providers and they each have 7 things that you could watch or listen to or read free. That's still a lot. And it's still going to be hard for your folks to get started. So then do a curation. And so thinking that through, spending that time doing that, now we've taken free leadership content and it's no longer free because someone spent some time doing some work, but we've made it much more valuable and much more likely that people will consume it. Because like, that's the problem, right? There's a bunch of good stuff out there. It's getting it to the place where your folks feel like it's good stuff and they will then consume it.
So narrow by topic, find some trusted advisors and or folks that you believe can give good content, and then curate from there.
And so that's right. And I think if you are anyone who's watching or listening, well, is watching mostly here, if you are someone that listens to podcasts, any podcast that you might listen to that involves interviewing of experts, like, you've already done that, right? At some level, you've done that because you said, I've picked that person's content, or that person's voice as the podcaster, and I'm letting them, and I'm trusting them to curate for me. So like, what I'm saying here isn't necessarily earth shattering, but we don't always think about it when we start to think about this organization. And that's really what I'm suggesting.
Well, this is the perfect segue, because when you talk about having a trusted advisor and or organization that you go to for content, who then might introduce you to some other people. So that's a big part of VLC, Virtual LeaderCon, which we mentioned at the beginning of this, is that it's not just us. It's all kinds of other folks that we know through our wide network of association and authors and top leadership experts. And that's one of the things I think that I heard time and time again in the 4 years that we've been doing this. This
will be the 5th one, I think.
This will be the 5th one in 4 years. Something like that. It doesn't matter.
We did the first one in 2020, and so this will be the 5th one in the 4th. That's what you're trying to say. It's been 4 years.
But my point is that we have really introduced a lot of folks that have known us for many years to some other amazing leadership experts. So let's get to the creative ways that you can use Virtual LeaderCon to develop leaders in organizations. Go ahead.
Yeah. So let me just say this, and you're getting frozen on my end. I mean, the sound is perfect, but you're getting frozen every so often. So anyone who's watching, we're sorry. Like we've all dealt with technology. We know how that goes, right? The only thing I want to add is that so without trying to sound boastful, everything that we just talked about earlier is part of why we built Virtual LeaderCon to start with back during the pandemic, was to help people do that curation, right? Let us do that curation for you and then bring you really, really good people, right? And then that's what we've been trying to do ever since. And so we do this Virtual LeaderCon event, which you can see on the screen, virtualleadercon.com, which is completely free. And as Adrienne said, we bring experts to you and in conversation with me and in a very participatory platform that we use for the process. So your question was, how can an organization use it, right? Yes. Well, we've got an article that I wrote that talks about 10 ways to do it. Are there any of those in particular that you want me to say more about, Adrienne? I can just pick one, but I'm curious if there's one you want me.
No, I would say if you want to pick one that you think is probably widely useful.
Well, yeah, I will. I'll pick one because here's the thing. This year, Virtual LeaderCon is 2.5 days long. So I think that counting the times when I'm having 2 people join me, I think altogether it ends up being like 20 different leadership experts, including me, if I can be counted in that list.
We'll allow it.
And so it goes back to where we started. It's still overwhelming. It's 2.5 days. There's a lot of stuff. And people are going to say, well, September 17, 18, and 19, my calendar's kind of busy, right? And if I'm thinking about this organizationally, what do I want to do? Just unleash everybody on all of this? Well, we could talk about ways you could do that, but I think we should start here. Like pick a session. Like go to virtualleadercon.com and go look at the agenda and say, hey, this is an area we really want to work on. And I'm just thinking of Dan Rockwell, who many of you might know or have heard of, and he and I are going to talk about delegation. And so if delegation, for example, is something you'd really like to be working with your leaders on, or some portion of your leaders, then rather than saying, hey, I'm going to ask everyone to go sign up for Virtual LeaderCon because it's this cool free thing, why not just think about the chance for a bunch of your leaders targeted to go to that one session, right? And then, of course, once they're registered for free, they could attend anything else they wanted. But if I'm sitting in an organization as a learning and development person, as a training person, as a leadership development person, and I could make a bunch of folks aware of an event that has 2 experts on it talking about a topic that's important to my organization, and it's not going to cost me anything, that sounds like a pretty good idea. And if it happens to then let all those leaders see that there's other stuff they could pick and choose of their own, that seems like an even better idea. And then the third thing is that, you could probably hire me or Dan to do a webinar in your organization. And then that would cost you to have us, but now you'd get both of us for nothing. And the last thing I'll say about that, Adrienne, is that, we do this. Lots of other people do webinars. And you say, well, we can send people to a webinar for free. There's a difference between this and a webinar, I think, in at least 2 ways. And you might have others to add to that. But free webinars generally have a reason, and when we do them, we're trying to encourage people to take action on something or sometimes purchase something. There's not going to be that happening here, right? So there's not like any call to action to like upsell people to anything specifically in any one of these sessions. Now, there are ways that people can get access to the content further, but I think it has a very different feeling than a webinar on that front. And secondly, because of the platform that we use, it's far more participation than I think you would see normally on a webinar. Would comments, thoughts, agree with those things?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say the other way that it's quite different is that the audience really has quite an impact on what the content is. So for sure, we don't go out to these experts and just say, hey, come join us and we'll talk about whatever happens in that time.
Or whatever Kevin thinks of in the moment, right?
We obviously have a focus, and for sure that expert has an area that they are interested in speaking on. They've got a new book, it's their expertise. But a lot of times conversations take a different turn. And that is largely driven by the audience's needs. So the attendees really do get to participate, do get to drive where the conversation goes. And I think that's significantly different than when you're on a webinar where there is an agenda. There is an agenda, of course, here, but it's a little looser. And we'll go where really the audience needs us to go. And so I think that's different and also just a bit more exciting and dynamic.
And I'm going to say this. I can't say this with 100% certainty, but I think very high likelihood, because we haven't had the final conversation with all of our guests, but you're not likely going to see any slides either, right? So, which is nothing wrong with it with PowerPoint slides, but that'll be different for sure
Yes.
than what you normally see in a webinar.
I hope so, because I had sent an email about it last week where I said there will be no slides.
I can think in 4 previous years that maybe there was 1 or 2 where someone showed a few, but it's
I think so.
Very, very rare. That's really not, my daughter would say, that's not the vibe of virtual LeaderCon.
It
right?
is not the vibe. My daughter would say the same. Why don't you talk a little bit about some of the types of leaders? This was a big part of the focus of your blog post, is some of the folks that would be particularly beneficial for them.
Yeah, I think that, as we talk with our customers and our prospects in leadership development, learning development, one of the things that they're often looking for is, hey, we've built some good programming for our leaders, which is great, but what we haven't done is we don't have as much stuff for what some people would call their high potential folks. And so look at that. Someone's saying nice things about us here. See, Cheryl's saying that people do actually chat. And someone else is saying, there you go. Most engaging virtual conference I've experienced. But a lot of times what folks will tell us is we've got programming. We're pretty happy with that programming. But what we don't necessarily have is stuff for our high potential leaders. Or sometimes maybe you don't have high potential. You don't have a high potential list in your organization, but that you have some folks who are eager, that are hungry, that are always the ones that whatever you're giving them, they're looking for more. Well, I think for them, virtual LeaderCon is the perfect thing. Just like unleash them on this and let them pick what they want to come to what they can come to, and that sort of thing. And I think the other group, Adrienne, that I think it's especially useful for is new and frontline leaders, or maybe even aspiring frontline leaders, to give them a sense and get them the chance again to pick some things that might be most valuable and useful to them. We try to have content from a variety of speakers, but also on a variety of topics, right? So it's not like everything's going to be about leadership communication, or everything we mentioned delegation. Everything's going to be about delegation. In fact, the pre-conference day is all about leading at a distance, distributed teams, distributed leadership, long distance stuff, future of work stuff. So you may have leaders that are struggling with that specifically, in which case that pre-conference day on the 17th would be a great place to go. So I think, we don't build this, as you know, Adrienne, we don't build this with the intention of, we're doing this for this group of leaders. But when I try to put myself in the other seat and think about this as a customer, to me, those high potential, really eager leaders, and those new and frontline leaders, I think two specific groups. And yet, as you know, we often have senior leaders joining and participating actively as well.
Yes, for sure. It's always a very wide variety of leaders in terms of experience, in terms of industry that they're working in. Certainly in terms of location, we have folks that are joining us when it's, 10 o'clock at night in France or Ireland or wherever the case might be.
Yep.
I'm always super impressed with the dedication of the attendees and the folks that are joining us, coming at all hours of the day. So as Cheryl said, it is fun. I just described it to a new teammate who will be joining us for the first time, who's in charge of our social media. I said, it's really fun, and I think you're going to like it. So I think that's a perfect word for it.
Yeah, I love that, because here's the thing. Learning ought to be fun. Like, I think it's a, and we try to do this in live workshops, in person. And I often will say this, like, if in 2 days or if in this length of time you've seen that you had a good time, we did important work and we had a good time doing it. That should be a model of how work happens. And we also know that when we find enjoyment as we're learning, when we can put emotions to learning, it helps us learn it better. So like, we're not just doing that because we like to have fun, although on our team we do like to have fun. There's a purpose in that. And we're really trying to create something that's engaging. I want to go back to something, Adrienne, we were talking about earlier about, let's say that as an organization, you decide to invite a bunch of people to come and just encourage them to block their calendar for this one session. You know, a lot of clients, they try to do something for their leaders every month. This could be what you do in September, right?
A lunch and learn, I think we could
do it like a lunch and learn, right? But here's the other thing: have everyone come, and then have people stay, rather than for the 45 minutes of the session, have them book an hour, and then have everyone join on your Teams or your Zoom, and then debrief it and talk about it together, or the following day, like, what did you get from it? Or if you let people pick their own session to attend, then do a lunch and learn debrief. Here's what I got. Here's what I got. Here's what I got.
Split it up. That's another great way to make good use of very often not a lot of free time in your calendar. You can say, hey, let's all look at this agenda and decide how we're going to split it up. I'm going to attend these two, you'll attend this one, and then we'll have some time to debrief on it.
And, you know, people do that at a, I was going to say an in-person conference all the time, right? 3 people from the organization go, and then they split up, and then they are conscious about that. There's no reason you can't do the same thing here, even though there's not anything happening concurrently. But people can attend this concurrently with their work, and then and you could sort of split it up, and people could come back together. You could just, and you know, and maybe you're saying, hey, I'm not going to be able to make this happen, or I'm here just as an individual, not thinking about this organizationally. Find a partner and just do that. And we actually have people that attend the session that end up doing that end up sort of becoming peer learning partners after it's over. They didn't even know each other. But there's no reason that you can't do that with people inside your organization.
It is another great opportunity to network with folks just like you. We have certainly, we provide opportunities, and we know of folks that have reached out to us saying, hey, I'd like to connect with so-and-so in the chat. Can you help make that happen? So there's multiple ways to learn and grow and connect with these folks beyond the event, which I think is also what makes it unique.
Let me say one more thing about that, and then we should probably start wrapping up. But I think that the other thing that makes it different than a lot of other events, whether it's a live event, in-person event, or something else, is because the learners are so interactive and in sort of co-creating the experience, you know, there are oftentimes learners that get connected with those experts, right? The email addresses get shared, LinkedIn's happen, and you as an OD or a L&D person might listen to a session with one of our guests and say, that's the speaker we need. That's the person we need to work with. Now, we would love for you to have us help you, but ultimately we want your organization to get the leadership support that you need. And if that comes from, you know, reaching out to Michael Bungay-Stanier, who joins us, or David Dye, or like I could go right on down the list of people, Jones Laughlin, et cetera. Like if that's what you get from this, that's also of great value. Being able to actually get connected with these really, really, really smart people.
Yeah, for sure. I have memory, and I recall folks coming back year after year and saying that they might have booked one of those speakers, or they led me to this person who did work for us who did work in our organization. So I would say that's a fairly regular occurrence.
So Adrienne, we've been talking about this. As a free event, which of course it is. But what if an organization wants to take advantage of it? Like people can't attend on those days. Do they have an option?
They sure do. Funny you should ask. It's almost like we teed it up. Yes, there is what we call a premium registration option. So if you attend live, that means you actually have to be there live when the event is streaming. which of course, as we've said, there's all the value you can get from that. But if you want to go back and access any of the sessions, if you want to rewatch them, if you want to share them with your team, then you would want to purchase the premium registration, which gives you access to all of the transcripts, all of the videos, all of the audio, everything from all of the sessions after the event is over. And we are also offering a unique registration option for the pre-conference. So since the pre-conference is very specifically for remote and hybrid teams, and we are getting ready to launch the revised second edition of Kevin's book, The Long Distance Leader, which I'm sure he's got, yep, right there. We are offering the opportunity to buy a copy, pre-order a copy of that book, which comes out actually on the day of Virtual LeaderCon. So if you pre-order a copy of the book, then you get the on-demand version or on-demand access of that pre-conference for free. So right there on the screen, you'll see what the options are. So free, you can attend all of them live. You can pre-order a copy of the book and get a copy of the pre-conference free, or you can purchase premium, which gives you access to all of the sessions.
And I'll just say one other thing, and that is that once you make that purchase and it's digital, there's really nothing we can do. It sits in your hands, but it's our intention that that's really sort of an individual purchase. If you want to share with a person, I mean, we can't stop you, and we're not trying to be the digital police here. But if you're thinking about using this across your organization, which I'm guessing some of you who are watching would be doing, then you just reach out to us afterwards. And you don't have to make this decision before. You can make this decision anytime and say, hey, we'd like to have this to put all of it on our LMS, or we would really like to have access to these certain sessions. All of those sort of larger licensing questions, we can have a one-on-one conversation with you at any time before or after. You can reach out to me here on LinkedIn, or if you work with someone on our team, you can reach out to them, or we can talk about it later. It doesn't matter. Our heart in this whole thing, this brainchild of Virtual LeaderCon that I dropped on our team during the pandemic, was to really be a source of learning and inspiration for leaders around the world and make it really accessible. And we've continued to do it for a variety of reasons. And one of them is that reason hasn't changed, right? Even though in September of 2020, no one could do any training because they were all locked down, and we were offering this opportunity. But the need is still there, and the opportunity is still one that we're pleased to offer. So,
right.
That sounds like that's it, everybody. So I'm going to put this back up. So Adrienne quizzed me, and we talked about several ways that you could use Virtual LeaderCon in your thinking about it organizationally. And if you go to kevineikenberry.com/10 ways, 10 ways, that gives you give a chance to look at some of those things we talked about, which we talked about in greater depth, but also some other ideas as well. Feel free to take a look at that. And even if you don't know how to make this happen, or you'd like to help leaders in your organization, but you're not in that spot, please join us as an individual. And even if hey, I'm not sure I can sell this in our organization because we've got a bunch of other leadership stuff going on. You got one or two people that you think would be interested, let them know, or just join us yourself. We'd love to have you join us at Virtual LeaderCon on the Eastern time, the afternoon of September 17th, and then all day on the 18th and 19th. That's a Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday in the middle of September. And it's going to be here before we know it. 20 some days, like 22 days, I think, until we're here.
That's unbelievable, but you are right.
All right. Adrienne, thanks for joining me today. Thanks for walking me through some of this and us chatting about it. I appreciate it.
Yes, thanks for having me.
And so everybody, I hope that you found this useful, and I hope that most of all, what I hope is that you took some ideas from what we've talked about today, whether you use them as related to Virtual LeaderCon or not. I hope that you found it valuable. And then most of all, I guess in the end, I hope that you'll join us for Virtual LeaderCon, virtualleadercon.com, and we'll look forward to seeing you then. Thanks, everybody. And thanks again, Adrienne.
Thank you.